What's going on, Soul Tribe? And welcome to Alchemist Astrology. Justin here, and are you ready to get into those lunar shenanigans? Because you know what, it's an interesting one as it always is. But I think that this week is really kind of getting the feel for the Capricorn energies that we're getting ready to move into, because that stellium's going to start to build. Venus is going to be joining the party there, so we're going to have these kind of, this one I think is going to be kind of a little busy week, especially around the time the moon's in Pisces. That's going to be a real kind of active time that we'll talk about. But yeah, we'll definitely navigate these lunar energies. But before we jump into that, if you're new here, again, my name is Justin, and one of the things that I do in this channel is talk about the lunar shenanigans, which is just the astrology of the moon, what sign it's in, what phase it's in, what happens to go void of course, and just to get a feel of the energies as the moon is making these connections with the different celestial bodies. Since the moon is so closely represents the people, we the people. So we get to follow the moon and the constant changes and fluctuations that are happening around us there. Now, before we get into that, if you just one little other little piece there, if you want to support the work that I'm doing further, down in the description box there is a link for my Patreon page. I have two tiers on there. One of them is will give you access to the Lucky Day podcast, which is a monthly show that covers the most auspicious dates of each month for whatever endeavor that you're wanting to initiate. And then, to give it that extra support. And then the second tier will give you access to that, plus a personalized transit report from me each month. And who doesn't want that? It's almost as good as a personal reading. But if that's something that you're interested in, all that stuff is down in the description box for you. But let's go ahead and jump into this thing here, because I'm going to be looking at the moon gaining light. Love that. But I'm going to be covering the week of December 23rd through the 29th, 2025. And let's go ahead and get into this thing here. Because on the 23rd, we're starting off with the moon in Aquarius there. We're waxing in light now. And the moon is going to first complete a sextile with Mercury. And there's going to be these series of sextiles that are going to be happening here as the moon moves through these next signs. And the sextile is a harmonious aspect. It's one that it's not as beneficial as the trine. It's where the celestial bodies are about 60 degrees apart from one another, but it requires a bit more effort, a little more initiative, but still can create that beneficence, those pockets of opportunities and things. So this could be, a number of things that could be going on with here. When we're talking about Mercury, this could be maybe on a personal level. Maybe you're wanting to learn something new, from maybe you want to learn. I mean, I'll give you an example. I got a book. Someone actually gave me a book the other day that just talks about the science of stretching and just going into the different muscles and things. I thought, oh, that's as someone who works out as often as I do. I'm like, yeah, that actually would be very, very useful there, and just see if what I can learn from it, see what I already know, and what I can increase on. So that could be a great way of working with, taking some kind of course, learning some kind of trade, whatever that's happening to look like. Mercury is a very practical energy. So I think that could be something really, really useful. And there's such a variety with the Mercury. I think that's something where it can be hard to just kind of put one thing in a box there. So it's just like thinking about what you find fascinating, and then putting that, thinking about the moon being about the gains and expenses and things, then, maybe you want to save up for, save up for, again, like a course, or maybe you want to do something where you're traveling, possibly the moon dealing with wanderings and travel. This could be an opportunity to maybe go somewhere with a friend or like a sibling or something like that, go on a little adventure, whatever that, and see what and that would be something too. I maybe would invite in this kind of energy. If you get a chance this week, go somewhere you haven't been. Kind of explore around your city. See if there's an area that you've been meaning to go. Maybe there's a nice little park, or there's something maybe where you can catch the sunrise, or maybe catch the sunset somewhere, something along those lines. That could be a really kind of useful way of kind of working with this. But I could see this too just as generally just like maybe an opportunity where maybe people are maybe a little bit more kind of out and about, just in kind of general, especially I would say though probably in the states, considering that we're getting closer to the holidays here. But yeah, so you may notice a lot more people just kind of out on the in your kind of your commute, in your place of city, wherever that may happen to be. So maybe increase conversation, talks within like with family members and things like that, just thinking about the moon and stuff. So those are some pretty kind of general things that I could see kind of happening there. This could be even too Mercury dealing with like kind of like the finances and like kind of banking and things. Maybe there's like again going around and just like exploring creating that sense of community. I think that's a really kind of useful way for the kind of the moon sextile and Mercury as well. Maybe seeing where you're just kind of seeing where your like kind of resources are going, the things that maybe you're supporting, maybe you're wanting to see more of that, maybe like something along those lines there. So I think there's something that can be very friendly, very kind of social there. Maybe talking to the people that you maybe see on a regular, talking with the neighbors, saying hey, just kind of whatever that might look like there. But I overall kind of like this energy starting off here with that moon sextiling, kind of moon sextile Mercury there. And then we get to the 24th, and the moon will finish its time in Aquarius, and then it'll move into Pisces, and that's going to happen at around 5:08 p.m. Pacific time. And now, so like we do whenever the stars move into a new sign, we get the lay of the land here. And when we look at this, like I was saying, this is a busy one for the moon because the moon's going to have a connection with all of the celestial bodies at one point. It's going to sextile all these planets in Capricorn. As you see, Venus is freshly entered into Capricorn here too. So, or not two, so, but well, yeah, two, since they're all there. But yeah, we got now this build up in Capricorn that's happening. Now the moon's going to be squaring Mercury at some point, later that later in the week. The moon is going to be got that mutual reception that we get whenever the moon is in Pisces with Big Papa there, since Big Papa's in Cancer right now, so love that. And then get that month kind of conjunction with Saturn too, which can be a bit tougher there, but we're familiar with Saturn and Pisces now. we got that one down. But yeah, this is going to be a busy couple of days that the moon's going to be in Pisces, but it's starting off fairly nice. I like that it starts with the moon forming a sextile with Venus there. And again, this gives me, when Venus and the moon are in combination, I always think of something very, they're both very nurturing energies. So just on a personal level, with the moon being associated with the body, Venus being about that sense of there's a strong devoted energy with Venus. There's thinking about keeping things clean and pure, and so just taking care of the body. It doesn't have to be anything super. Where if you want to do let's say you want to take a bath and throw some rose petals and essential oils in it, you can go there. But it's just thinking about that, just like how we just take care of ourselves daily, thinking about the foods that we're eating. I think that can be where making yourself like a home cooked meal can be, I think, a really nice kind of moon sextile Venus thing. Maybe maybe doing like a little foot soak, or maybe you gotta put your spouse partner, maybe do like a massage or something like that, kind of work the stress out of the week, or whatever that could be. Like this could be a great time to getting together with people, getting with people, that sense of merriment and laughter. Because when we think about that with Pisces, just as an energy, it's ruled traditionally by Big Papa Jupiter, and it's the mutable water sign. It's one of the nocturnal signs, so more of this kind of receptive quality. And I think that this can be a great time to just get in some good feels, to get into some, and really just allow, because there's I think an increased sensitivity in Pisces. Whenever the moon is in a water sign, there's a more porousness that happens there. And so I think that just being around those people that are that can create that, just kind of that space of just like that happiness, that balance that Venus wants to bring. And I think this can carry out even into like I've been thinking about, one of the significators for Venus is dealing with like the factories and markets and things. This could be something we're thinking about going doing something maybe in your workspace, possibly maybe you're getting people just like a card or something like that, or maybe like bake something, whatever that might look like, bringing like a little thing for everyone to just kind of enjoy, and to just kind of send them off. And even when this happens a couple times a month that we get these sextile with Venus, and it doesn't have to be just because there's holidays around, just doing something, just kind of nice things in general. I think that it's kind of a reminder of how those benefics work. It's that sense of, it's like I think about when people say, like, when you pass a smile, it's kind of hard not to smile back. That sort of thing, just kind of spreading the good vibes around, as one can. A little, maybe paying someone like a compliment. It can go a long way. When we're thinking about that kind of stuff there. So, and that has that sort of ripple effects where you put that energy out there. That stuff does, I think, tend to come back there. So, I like when the moon is forming a sextile with Venus, and this could also be too, of course, like an opportunity for like more spending. I think can happen there. So maybe just more people just kind of out and about doing some things there. So it's another kind of thing. That maybe even be something too. Something like Venus is like kind of like that bestowing of gifts and things. So, maybe if you're not getting something for someone like to that day, maybe you're planning for something ahead of time. They got a birthday down the line. I like doing that ahead of time. Just like if I see something that and a friend actually gave me this idea. She was just like, yeah, as I might happen to be on. I'm like, ooh, they would love this. I'm gonna get this that'll be for their birthday next year. I'm like, oh wow, like that's that's useful. So I'm like, just little things like that, can be a great way of kind of working with that energy there. And again, just making sure to take care of the body, making sure that you're getting enough rest, whatever that means for you, because everybody and everybody is different. So yeah, just doing the things that you can to keep things working well, keep things looking good, just taking care of yourself, however that looks. Then we get to the 25th of December, and then the moon's going to form a sextile with the sun and with Mars. Those aspects are going to be completed. And one thing that I like about when the moon is in harmony with especially in an easy aspect with the sun, I think this is a chance to one appreciate just one to just kind of take how you feel in the body. The sun really is that's that light of the mind, that the will in a sense. And this could be, I think, a great opportunity just to see how one is just kind of feeling. How grounded are we feeling in ourselves, but especially with that sun in an earth sign like Capricorn. It's like, is this the things that I've been initiating? What are some things that I like about these things, and what are some things that I can change? And then I think that, how can I make this light brighter? And then with that moon sextiling Mars, that's the initiative behind it, the effort to like get the thing started. It may not be the actual work yet, but maybe it's getting the plan for it, where it's like, okay, for example, I think one of my favorite things to talk about is with like working out, where it's like, okay, this is going to be like my new routine. Maybe I'm going to try incorporating some more yoga, just because I want to have just improved range of motion. It doesn't have to be always just about working yourself to the ground. Be just like, I want to be able to just like turn right and not have to worry about things like cracking and popping and throwing stuff out. You know what I mean? So this could be setting the game plan for that. Like, okay, I'm gonna do this on like maybe on Mondays and Thursdays, and just I'll do it for like maybe like half an hour. Get yourself geeked up for that. Imagine what that energy is gonna be like. How that's gonna feel. How you're gonna work in that time. You know what I mean? But yeah, overall, I kind of like that. But I do think that something to always remember with even with the easy aspects with the malefics, where I think that there are more chances for constructive things to happen with them. There's still the malefics, there's still the work, because even when we're talking about like working out and things, like even with something like stretching can be a little, uncomfortable at first, especially if it's, certain areas that you've neglected for a while, and it takes a minute to work to where maybe you can, let's say like a forward fold where we can maybe like touch our knees to where we can touch our ankles to where we can touch the ground. It's a progression that happens, and it requires various levels of sometimes of discomfort. We don't necessarily want to push to pain, especially with working out, but there is that sense of the malefics remind us that even in the easy stuff, like in order for things to get easy, we have to work at it. So that's something to just kind of think about with this energy. I do overall kind of like this there. This could also be too, just thinking about the sun representing like authorities and things. And oh, and by the way, if I didn't mention, I have these charts up here as well on the screen for the video version. Right now, I have the chart with the moon sextiling Mars. That happens at 7 degrees and 50 minutes at Moon in Pisces, Mars in Capricorn. But this could be where, just think about the sun representing kind of authorities and things. You know, there could be maybe some, because there's a lot under the beams right now with Mars and Venus. You know, maybe there could be, you know, new, you know, like a company partnering, you know, with like a new source of something. You know, maybe I'm just that could have been a better example, but you know, maybe some kind of leadership making some sort of like changes, making wanting to make some sort of like initiatives and things like that. So you know, that may be something to just kind of tune into as well, on whatever level that's, you know, you're kind of tuned in there, whether that is on a more kind of like national level, maybe more on a municipal level, or maybe even more on just like a home type of level. You know, maybe the partner's the boss, and you know, kind of say like, hey, we need to get this thing taken care of. You know, or thinking about like it from the roles of like parents and things like that, like, hey, clean your room, things like that. But yeah, just some things to think about on that one there. Now we get to the 26th of December, and now we got the moon. The first one's, or the next aspect the moon's going to do is have a square with Mercury. Now the squares are going to be, they're a bit tenser when we're talking about the square aspect. They can sometimes feel inharmonious and just a little bit just uncomfortable when we're thinking about that. But they're the interesting thing with the squares is that they do produce action. You know, there is a lot of power behind them. You know, the squares were martial, you know, considered martial in nature. And so the moon squaring Mercury on like maybe like a personal level, this could be where, you know, you're trying to get some, like, even just like looking at this the combination of the from the moon to Mercury, Jupiter, and Saturn. This could be like, okay, be wanting to do, we can go back to the workout thing. I wanted to get to a certain level of health. I want to get to a certain range of motion. I see the growth there, but it's going to take some time. And that Mercury moon square moon may just be like, you know, like getting into that flow, you know, like getting used to like, okay, this is something that you know, it's not just going to be like I do this thing once and then I'm flexible for life, you know, unfortunately. You know, it's something that it's like, okay, how do I make sense of that? The work that's going to be needed to get into whatever you're trying to do. Maybe this is something where you're trying to improve your finances. You know, this could be where you're maybe trying to solidify your relationships. You know, you know, but there could just be, it's just like the moon's just kind of figure out like what actions can I take? What are some ways that I can kind of tackle this to get the most abundance out of this kind of that moon trine Jupiter there? Because that's going to be the next aspect that the moon's forming in. So there's something beneficial that is coming out of this day here, but it's a mixed bag, because then the moon will shortly after will form that conjunction with Saturn. That's the one I have on the screen here. Happens at 25 degrees and 53 minutes. And you know, moon conjunct Saturn, it's the moon is being infused with that Saturnian energy. You know, there's that seriousness, that Saturn, that austerity, that strictness, that, you know, that idea that you can't just, you know, when it comes to even like whatever in thing that you're doing, it requires time, it requires patience, and it requires discipline, you know, to get things, you know, to take care of your home, to get the home that you want, to save up for that trip, to get the job that you want, to get, you know, to get the friends that you needed to get your health to where you're wanting to be at, you know. So this one feels like a bit of a mixed bag there. You know, it feels like it's trying to, that moon trine Jupiter is like trying to find the relief, to find the abundance, to find the kind of blessings, to trusting in the process of things, that there's, you know, like a sense of like justice and truth and whatnots that Jupiter brings amidst the, you know, or amongst the Saturnian things that can be just kind of happening on just kind of the daily basis, to the more kind of heavier side of life, you know. So I think that, and it's interesting too, because I didn't put this on there, but you know, moon Jupiter Jupiter's not giving as, it's more delayed right now, just because Jupiter's retrograde right now, and it won't be direct until, goodness, I don't think until like March. Yeah, I think it's like March 10th or so. So we got a little while for that, you know, while Jupiter's kind of backtracking here. So I think it's like we're in this space where we're having to make the most with what we have right now, and I think that sometimes where that sense of that restriction is annoying, that Saturn thing, and it really does put one in a bind. It makes one resourceful. I think about the times where I had, where resources were looking a little tight, and it's like, okay, I gotta make $5 feel like $50 for this week. So what are we doing? And you figure out, you get some things figured out. Whether it's asking for help. That could be even just something there. That may even be where that uncomfortable with that Mercury square. It's like maybe there's something like communicating to that people that, hey, times are a little tough right now, and can I get, if you can't maybe help me directly, do you know of any resources, that can, some additional things that can maybe that could help me along there, or maybe give me connection with someone else who can get me there. So, that interesting energy. I think that 26 is kind of bringing there, and then we get to the 27th, which is going to be another kind of active pocket there, because like shortly after we get into the 22nd, like a minute after, the moon is going to enter into Aries, and so now the moon's in a Martial sign, one of the Martial signs, and when we're looking at this Aries energy here, now we have all those Capricorn planets now in a square with the moon. So this is another little kind of active pocket here. The only one that the moon's not going to be in conversation with is Saturn in this kind of go round here. So especially since we ended with Saturn, that's at least a little bit of a break there. But yeah, we still got this overcoming square from Mars, who again, even though it's exalted, and the moon is in, so there's a reception there too. At least Mars is sees the moon in its house, so there's less. And let's just kind of talk about that, because I'm getting into it, as I'm pretty much getting into it, because we have the moon, shortly after it enters into Aries, is going to, like I said, square all these, Venus, the Sun, and Mars, and so just kind of thinking about that, the moon squaring Venus, there could be some sort of like some kind of like tension, maybe in some kind of relationships that's needing to be resolved. Maybe there's something that's going on in the economy, possibly something with like the markets and things, maybe something like, because again, Venus and the moon can deal with those, and I'm not thinking about necessarily in terms of like financial astrology, but I'm just more so talking about their significators. And Venus was, again, associated with that the weighing of coins and things. So may notice, that prices may be changing, and that there is, maybe not being able to do the sort of things that one can normally do. Maybe there's, how, as I think we all, have noticed, there's, I was just reading an article just like the other day, talking about the price of beef, for example, and like how that's affecting restaurants. And so then we get to the moon squared sun. So it's like you have something that's affecting, they maybe like the moving of, like, it could be just talk about money, for example. There may be some tensions there. Then you have that moon, that sun there, again, dealing with like authorities, for example. Now someone has to, the people in charge have to make different decisions, thinking about their companies or whatnot. What is that going to look like, and how is that going to affect the people, moon? What is that going to, what is that going to deal, or how is that going to change? Because that might even be something too, where with that moon squaring Mars, like if something could be, I'm thinking about the moon dealing with travel. Maybe where you're living, maybe that's not supporting you the way that you need it to, and that may be something that you're considering. Maybe it's like, okay, like I'm gonna have to, if it keeps rising like this, I may have to move to a different part of my where I'm living, or move somewhere all, just all together. So that could be some kind of like challenges that can be potentially come into that. And it's tense, when you think about all these squares that's activating. So that's one that this day I would definitely it'll be interesting to kind of see what comes up around this time, on a kind of broad scale, but definitely on a personal scale too. This could be where I would be mindful of just like tensions, being kind of high, especially with that moon, you being in a more kind of a fiery sign. Because, let me talk about that. The moon being in Aries. Aries is ruled by Mars, and it is the cardinal fire sign. It's one of the diurnal signs, so it's active. just because there's that square with Mars, I would be mindful of just like any kind of tensions there, because Aries is that it's one of the about as an initiator as that can be. There's just a that Aries, I think, just does. It's just one of those things that it doesn't really have to. It doesn't really think about that. It's just it goes on that sort of instinct when it feels that inspiration, that fire. It's just like, why wait? Let's do this thing now. So that would be just something I would just be mindful of tensions, between like this wouldn't be a day I'd get in fights with my boss, or whoever authority figures and things like that. Or if there is something that comes up there, there is still Venus in the mix. So this could be where it's like, okay, yeah, we had the thing, we exchanged the words, So how can we mend this? Can we mend this? What is that looking like there? So yeah, that's a very active pocket, kind of, or at least a potentially active pocket there. So I think that's something to kind of tune in there on the 27th. And then we get to the 28th of December, and then the moon's going to square Jupiter. And so this could be where you like, I even kind of going back to that story, let's say with like when we're talking about with the restaurants, it's like now it's like, how do you keep your business kind of going there when the abundance feels restricted? And this doesn't even have to apply to restaurants. This could be just in like, I'm sure there've been points where I'm not sure, but I think people can at least imagine where there's a point at different points where it's like, oh, you know what, there's not as much, there's not just as much, as I have to make do with the possessions that I have, and find a way to, think of. And one thing I think with the moon square Jupiter, I don't necessarily always think that it's just like Jupiter just giving something, but sometimes I think abundance can, it's like a change in beliefs. You're like, our relationships maybe with things can change. How we're seeing, what something that we once valued and put a lot of stock into, now it's just like, maybe want to reconsider that. Maybe this thing isn't doing it like I thought, and then that leads to that kind of moon trine Mercury. I think that can help be like, okay, where this shift isn't the greatest, it's something that is manageable while we're going through maybe this little tough pocket right now, while Jupiter is retrograde, and just kind of, you know what I mean? It's like kind of making the best of the situation as one can. I think that's really kind of what this kind of combination can give. I also think that just thinking about Jupiter dealing with, like, again, like kind of like that sense of like kind of arbitration and like in trust, and there's some legal matters that deal with justice, with Jupiter. There could be where there's this kind of this, just maybe recognizing some sort of injustice in some sort of way, and then trying to find ways to, with that Mercury trining moons, to solve that possibly, kind of maybe on a larger scale there. Like, let's what would I give it as an example? Maybe you're noticing that, like, maybe you're just noticing that, like, the neighborhood hasn't been looking like it's been like it could be, and so maybe you and maybe or a couple friends would might get together or whatever and do like some sort of like cleanup. This could be doing some kind of like getting involved in some kind of volunteering, something like that. So just some things to think about with the 28th there. Very interesting energy. And then we get to the 29th, because after we kind of go through all that little tense little pocket there, the moon will move into its sign of exaltation, Taurus, at about 3:57 a.m. Pacific time. And so this is nice. I got the chart up here with the moon at 0 degrees of Taurus. And so when we look at the lay of the land now, Moon's getting out of conversation with Mercury for a little bit, but it's still a pretty active pocket, and this is going to be kind of how we're ending the week there. Well, I mean, we're ending with a bunch of trines, so that is nice. The moon has reception with its ruler Venus, so that's really great. And it's got this overcoming trine, and that's had same things happening from the sun and from Mars. It's got this overcoming sextile from Saturn. And at least, at least if we're talking with the malefics, if there's going to be some sort of aspect there, rather it be an easier one than a like a square or a conjunction or opposition. And then even the moon will have a sextile with Jupiter at some point, as we get later into the weekend, maybe as we enter the new calendar year. But when we have the moon trines, just trines in general, this is the most beneficial aspect there. This creates just a lot of ease and just there's flow that's happening there. And when you think about even just the moon in Taurus, Taurus is ruled by Venus. They are the fixed earth sign in one of the nocturnal signs, so receptive in nature. And when you have one of the celestial bodies in its exaltation, like how you got Mars here and Big Papa, and that's kind of cool. We got at least got a few. Now that I'm just kind of even looking at that too, we got a few celestial bodies there that are in their kind of raised up in a sense. But yeah, when you got them in this exaltation, it gives them where those significators can be just really put to good use. The moon outside of its home really shines in Taurus. So that can be where I think Taurus is a great time to, especially in an earth sign, to get one just grounded in the body, just really kind of taking care of how's the body doing, how, thinking about the things that you're, again, doing regularly, and kind of slow down a little bit, take care of one's, kind of, again, one of oneself when we're in especially a Venusian sign, like when we're thinking about Taurus. And I think that this can be a time, especially with the moon kind of trining Venus, because it's been a busy week, that we kind of move through. So this can be a time where, there might be a pocket that's created where I'm like, okay, let me just rest for a little bit. Let me just kind of, just on a personal level, let me just kind of take a break. Let me just kind of be for a little bit. Let me maybe do something with some like friends or family. This could be something where you're just like, what, let me just like go do some groceries, kind of cook for myself and just kind of huddle in the house. Or, I've been meaning to do some kind of like cleaning around Earth energy is very practical, so it's like dealing with those kind of material matters. But yeah, I think the moon, moon trining Venus, moon trining the sun, this could be a chance to just get some energy back, to kind of, especially if this was a, one that really felt like it kind of depleted you, maybe especially around that Aries pocket, maybe that was something that was, really kind of active there, and that's something too, because this is, kind of pay attention. We went from being like heavy mutable signs and now we're in like all this heavy cardinal energy. So, if you've been noticing those shifts and things, this could be time to just kind of recharge, to get yourself just back in kind of running order there. So that's I kind of like how this week is wrapping up. Let me go ahead and switch over. But yeah, I like how this week is kind of wrapping up there. I think you could, it could be something where there could even be hopefully, because I know, this people are still got things to do, but maybe they're just noticing that the energies are a little bit slower, just a little bit, hopefully calmer with the moon in Taurus there. But again, there still can be these. One thing that I like to think about, especially with like the kind of positive or the more kind of easy aspects with the malefics, there still may be things going on, but this may be a time where it's more manageable. It doesn't take necessarily the stress or the problem away, but it's just like, you just get a little bit of a break from it, is what that can I think can feel like, or one way to kind of think about those kind of aspects there. So, but yeah, that's pretty much all I think I got for this week. So yeah, I kind of, we'll navigate this together. Just kind of thinking about, just kind of reflecting on last week. Like last week was interesting. It was kind of a lot going on. I'd say personally, like it's, thankfully you got all these planets that are getting ready to move out of Sagittarius, because like I think I mentioned last week, where I like Sagittarius season. I'm all for energy in Sag. It can be this one was a lot, just because it's like it was aspecting my moon. A lot of oppositions were happening with my moon placement, so I'm just like, let's get out of there. Let's get out of there, and I'm looking forward to a break, for a little bit, to kind of get some things done, to get some work kind of done there with all this kind of Capricorn energy. This stuff is going to be moving to my 6th house, and taking care of the body, doing some health things there, and doing all that stuff. So Yeah, but it's been a pretty, I'd say like, yeah, busier week. Of course, like I said, in the States, it's the holidays there. So of course, talking with friends, and I had some friends who had some birthdays in Sag, and then we got Capricorn coming up, so I got a bunch of Capricorn sons I got to reach out to here soon. So, but yeah, it wasn't too bad, but it was definitely it was especially when with that the moon in where's the moon right now? I'm trying to think where the moon's at. The moon's in. Oh, I can just pull up the chart real quick. Moon is in. It's in Capricorn right now when I'm recording this. So, but yeah, not too bad of a week. Not too bad. But yeah, and let me know how things went for you. I said now I'm just rambling. But yeah, let me know how things went for you down in the comment section. How this week is showing up for you. How the transits may have showed up for you, and how you feel about this. Like thinking about like how you've noticed the moon. Show up in your kind of like your environment and things. As the moon changes, how people's behaviors tend to shift. And what are some things that you notice, but if you want to also see what's going on just like monthly, because I actually that's funny, on that busy day on the 27th, that's when I'll actually have the monthly videos coming out for that. So if you want to see what's going on with the sun and the other celestial bodies and those aspects that are going to be happening, there is down in the description box, there is a playlist tab called Celestial News Monthly, where you can go to, and I have them all, by dates and things, so you can definitely check that out. There's also the series of videos that I'm doing, and I've been meaning to get back on them. It's just been really just kind of a lot kind of going on in the backgrounds here. But I also have this series of videos talking about different celestial bodies and different zodiac signs in different houses. So that's something that you want to, and just like ways to think about that as you're approaching your own natal chart. So that's something that you want to check out. I have those all by playlist as well for you by the signs there. And if you have any requests that you want, feel free to just add them in the comments, and I have a little queue, and I just knock them out, and then I'll have them posted as soon as I can. So, but that's all I got for you there. I won't keep you too much longer. But until next time, stay mindful out there. Keep raising that vibration through the. Oh no, actually no, that's for the other one. Keep eyes on that moon, and you can keep raising the vibration through the roof. Why not? I won't stop you from doing that. And I will catch you on the next one. Later.